So The Walking Dead has returned for Daryl Dixon Season 2, and Season 1 of this show was refreshing for me as a Walking Dead fan with the cinematic quality that they were able to bring, and the new setting was refreshing for fans of The Walking Dead, and the writing quality felt like a step up from a lot of the other recent spin-offs that we've had for the series. So overall, I feel like it's one of my favorites, if not my favorite spin-off of The Walking Dead yet. And while the end of the previous show, The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live, the ending took a lot of the wind out of the sails of the franchise by shutting down the CRM storyline, and you can see my past videos on that. Although the show overall was definitely high quality, that ending took a lot of the wind out of the sails, a lot of the hype seems to have been gone from the franchise, but when Season 2 was right around the corner, I'm starting to get that hype back up because Walking Dead is one of my favorite franchises and I miss it when it's gone. So here we are with Season 2, and I'm excited to be back reviewing it. So this episode here is mostly about getting Carol over to France, because this show, when it was first announced, was supposed to be Daryl and Carol as a show, and Carol was not available for Season 1, so it just became Daryl on his own, and now we're getting Carol over there. So in a way, it almost feels like it's a little underwhelming that is the main marketing push. As much as I love Carol, it feels like that's what it should have been from the start, is Carol and Daryl together. So they have to create something, a story about how Carol gets over there that stands up on its own and is good in its own right, so that it justifies it and doesn't just feel like making up for not doing it last time. So that's what they attempt to do in this episode, and I think it's overall pretty successful. I think Daryl's part of this episode is not quite as strong as Carol's part, but there's a culmination towards the end. We have a pretty good finale that has a lot of intensity to it, and some good action scenes, some great zombie gags in this episode. So it's pretty strong for a premiere for The Walking Dead. So overall, I'm happy with this. I'm excited to see where we're going next. The beginning of the episode is kind of trying to trick you a little bit. It's a little bit like it's made up to be like we're straight up continuing from the end of last season, where Laurent's getting attacked by zombies and Daryl has to come in and save him. But it turns out that it's actually a few weeks later, and Daryl is trying to train Laurent to be self-sufficient. And I think the reason for this is Daryl still has the goal of getting back home to everybody he loves back in America. And here, he's trying to teach Laurent to defend himself so he can feel like he doesn't need to be there to protect him. Because the reason why he's still here is because he needed to protect Laurent, who went to the dock to see Daryl off. He wanted to say goodbye properly, and Daryl had to miss his boat because all the zombies were coming to get Laurent. So that's why he's still here. He doesn't really want to be here, but he's trying to make himself useful by doing something practical to teach Laurent. And Laurent just straight up here just says the theme for Daryl's part of the season. All of this has been about trying to give Daryl a happy ending, like what Judith told him in the finale of the original series. Everyone deserves a happy ending. Daryl's got to find his. And Laurent here is talking about how home is where the ones you love are. And I think this is interesting for Daryl as a character who's more of a lone wanderer type. So he doesn't necessarily fit in anywhere. He's always been wandering. He's always searching. And in a way, that's how he expresses his love for people. We'll get back to that later on in the review here. But this scene kind of catches us up. You know, it talks about Père Jean, a priest that taught Laurent, that was kind of a father figure for him, that thought the zombies still had souls, and tried to teach peaceful ways to Laurent. And then he talks about how the children they ran into told him about how the home is where the ones you love are. So it's all these steps along the way trying to catch us back up. And Daryl is at odds with Lo Sang here, who's in charge of this facility where they're at. And they're trying to have this kind of religious movement where they're pacifists, they're trying to teach a more peaceful way. And Laurent is going to be like the figurehead kind of messiah of this group. So that's the storyline here. But Lo Sang is in charge in the meantime. And a few of the resistance members that we met last season, they got captured by Janae, the big bad. And Daryl's saying we got to rush in and go get him, because as soon as Janae finds out that they're not going to give him anything, she's going to kill him, because that's what happened to him. And Lasang is saying we have to be cautious about this. We have to be peaceful about this. We can't just rush in. So that's the big conflict. Daryl confronts him in the middle of a meeting so everybody can hear. Lasang kind of seems to be taken aback by that and offended by that, takes him aside after the meeting. And he shows him this kind of Buddhist painting type of thing that he has that's supposed to record like the life of Buddha and stuff. So he's just kind of trying to show off that he's learning how to be more peaceful, and he wants to instill that in everybody. They talk about pacifism a lot, and Daryl is a guy who is not afraid to throw the first punch, as he says in this scene here. So that's the main conflict, is how much violence is needed and when, and Daryl is a bit too aggressive, and he is told to stop training Laurent because Lasang wants to teach him compassion and stuff like that. But really, I think Lasang is kind of not saying what he means here. I think Lasang is really saying, like, we need you to find your own place here that doesn't conflict with me. I think it's almost like a power play more than anything. And Daryl comes out and talks to Isabel about it, and she kind of says the same thing. And Daryl talks about how he's thinking about everybody back home if they're still thinking about him. And that is our excuse to cut to Carol's part of the episode. And we pick up pretty close to where we left off with her at the end of last season. She just got Daryl's bike back from the guy who took it. And she goes to where Daryl got sold to the French. And she confronts these guys here. Now this scene, it's fun. I like seeing Carol be a badass as always. We always love to see that. But it does stretch a little bit. I get that she's desperate. We get that in the next scene here. We get that she's a little unhinged at this point, but at the same time, it does feel like Carol should be kind of getting overwhelmed by them in this scene because there's more of them, obviously. And she didn't have a weapon going into this, and she picks up Daryl's crossbow, which needs time to reload. And while she's reloading, after she shoots the guy, you'd think that they would try to rush her, sneak up on her. One of them does try to throw something at her. It's just a little bit of a stretch. And while I love this scene for entertainment value, those things are nagging at me. And there's a lot of little things in this episode that are kind of like that. And we'll get to some of those later, but it's a lot of the problems we kind of have with the franchise overall kind of creep into this. We got a new title sequence, which is cool. Shows us little previews of where we're going. Has Carol in there. Love the new scene here. And we got Carol in the car listening to music, rejecting it, not liking the music, throwing it out the window. It's in a music scene, and then she hears meditations, and she can't get the tape to stop. And she ends up kind of screaming and freaking out. And that's just her state of mind at this time. It kind of shows why she just rushed into there without a real plan, and kind of why she's not necessarily acting in the most logical sense. She's looking for Daryl because I think it's because she has all this unresolved issues. We get to that later in the episode with Sophia. And she has all this trauma, Henry, and all the things in her personal life that went to tragedy. And she's always distracted herself with what needs done in the moment. And when all those things quiet down and just life goes back to normal, especially when Daryl's not there, she feels like all these things are bubbling back up in her again. So that's what's happening, and that's why she needs to find Daryl. It's almost her own distraction in the moment, but she's going to have to confront some of these things as the season goes on, I'm sure. So that's the plot line with her. She crashes the car. She gets distracted with the meditations, and then there's the airplane overhead. And here's one of the problems with the franchise overall that we get a lot is the over-reliance on coincidences. And in a one-off, they're fine. She just so happens to find the one person that has a plane not far from where she found the information that Daryl's in France. So I can accept it on a one-off. It's just this franchise has had so many of those things, especially in the spin-offs. We're over-relying on coincidences in this show. And it does get to me a little bit, but I can accept it in a one-off. And that's just something you got to accept in order to enjoy this episode. But I like this character, Ash, we have here, who is going to be Carol's gateway to get to France. And they're trying to make it so it's not just that he is the bridge to get there. He has a story of his own, and even the plane is a symbol for something within his character that we'll get to in a second. But I like this character because he's kind of like a prepper guy, I guess you could say. He's got his own facility. He's got everything he needs there. and there's all of these traps and gates and guarded things that protect him. So I like this because we got this greenhouse at the center, and at the center of the greenhouse, we find out later in the episode, it's a secret for a while, and then we find out it's like a grave site for his son, right? And that's what we find when we're in the greenhouse later. And I like this symbol because, you know, he's got all these guards up that protect him and keep people away. And then at the center of it, this place where he lives is almost representative of his inner life as well. Because at the center of this is the grief over the lost son. And that's something that's really important to him. And that's guarded by all these other things. Locked doors, gates, traps, etc. So it's representative of his inner life. So I like that little bit of symbolism there, in that we're establishing his character by the things he chooses to surround himself with. Carol here says something about hoping to rely on the kindness of strangers, and that is definitely symbolic of this episode, because Carol says it, but she ends up manipulating and lying to the person who's saving her, so she's not being a kind stranger. And the same thing's happening with Daryl, where he is more aggressive than the other people. He is the stranger in a strange land, and he is not being gentle or kind. So there's a reversal there, where both Carol and Daryl are not being the kind strangers in order to get what they think is right. So that, I think, is a good symbol as well. And here we got a flashback scene to the Sophia moment. They open the barn, and we completely recreate shot for shot in this new place Sophia coming out of the barn, just to show the trauma that she has and how it's unresolved. And I personally don't know that we actually needed to recreate it. I think that we could have just seen the barn open, seen her reaction, and just gotten there anyway, because anybody who's watched that scene, we're not going to forget that. And they do it again later with the Cherokee Rose, where they show a flashback to the scene with the Cherokee Rose in season 2 of the original show. And it just feels like holding the audience's hand a little too much. When these are things that are seared into my brain, even if you only saw it once, I think you remember it. Maybe not, maybe they need to remind people, but I get what they're going for, just showing her state of mind. And, it is well done. I just don't know that it was necessarily justified, although I do understand why they did it. Like I mentioned earlier, all that unresolved tension within her. So Ash here is helping her out, feeding her, and then he's going to fix up her car. And we have this motif of the locked doors getting shut off because the generator doesn't work. And I just know it's just another plot convenience thing. And I feel like if the power shut off, it's not like there's constantly power keeping these things locked. You know, if the power goes off, they would still be locked, I would assume. I don't actually know how these things work, but I'm assuming they would still be locked because it's not very secure. And it feels like, how did he get this far in the apocalypse with all of these gates that just at a moment's notice will unlock and zombies will come in? It just is a plot convenience thing you have to accept, but it's just all these little things that add up. You know, it doesn't bother me on a one-off. I can accept it for what it is. But when all these things add up, you gotta deduct a point just for all these things in sum total. But I still like the zombie action in this episode. We got some really great zombie performers. I think this scene here is excellent. The greenhouse scene, I love that we have the staging with the zombies coming from all sides, zombies smashing through the glass, zombies coming in from the front, and then we have her creating a triangle of safety and killing them with gardening tools. It was a really cool scene, and I think that they stage it really well. Zombies coming in, and this is director Greg Nicotero definitely just doing his thing and very successfully creating a cool action scene here. And she escapes through the roof, and Ash finds out that she was in there, and that is their connecting moment about how Ash lost his son Avi and the trauma over that. And they have a bonding moment here. And for me, I feel like this scene, they want you to have a tearjerker reaction. I didn't necessarily get there because I'm not as invested in these characters yet. But I get what they're going for, and I like the symbolism where we're going with this character here. So I like it overall. So here we have the dinner scene, and Carol spins up a lie about how Ed was this terrible person, and Sophia was born and something good came from something bad. And it ties in with what Ash is saying about Avi, how Avi loved planes, and the plane itself is a symbol of hope, because after he was just locked up in his house after his son died, he went out and he found the plane the first time. His son Avi really liked planes, so the plane itself is a symbol of both hope and grief, and something good coming from something bad. And it's this question of, like, why do bad things happen to good people? And it's because sometimes something good can come from that. So I think that that's really great symbolism here, and we end the episode on having the plane taking off into a rising sun. So it's, a new dawn of a new day and hope, but also grief, and all these things kind of mixed into one. The airplane symbolizes grief and hope. So it's really, I think, a great symbol, and they have the airplane isn't just the ticket to get where we need to go, it actually has meaning in and of itself. So I think that was really smartly done there. And we got Carol helping out clean up after the greenhouse, and then she spins up this story about how Sophia might still be alive and she's in France and I need to get over there. So she realizes that she can exploit the fact that he has a dead son and might have sympathy for this, even though obviously Sophia's dead and she's going over there to save Daryl. But if she tells him, oh yeah, my best friend Daryl, who's a grown man who can take care of himself, is stuck in France and I need to help him, he's not going to be on board with that. So that is really, I think, a very Carol thing to do. That is Carol's MO often, is she's okay with subterfuge and lying to get what she wants because she is doing it for a greater good. And this is like another thing Losang in this scene here with Daryl. Something Losang talks about is the greater good. We got to be cautious for the greater good. And Daryl and Carol are kind of like, we're doing bad things for the greater good. So I think that is good yin and yang symbolism going on. And it's something the two characters, Daryl and Carol, share a lot. And I love Daryl's character of the lone wanderer, but he, as a character, has always been somebody who's constantly searching. So he is a character who, he connected with Carol to begin with through that Cherokee Rose thing because of the shared trauma and grief with the two of them. And the fact that he went out searching for Sophia in the woods and he confronted like the hallucination ghost of his brother in the woods on his own. And then he came out of that with love and connection for Carol. And I think that even expressing himself through searching for Rick, like that is his expression of love and brotherhood to Rick, is this search. The reason why he's even here to begin with is he's just always looking, always searching. That's how he connects with people, is by going off on his own and trying to do something for them. So now that he's in a place where he's needed, he doesn't know how to express himself other than going out on his own and doing what he wants. So that's what happens in this scene here. We're ramping up to a finale here, and we're talking about the logistics of getting the plane over there. It's not necessarily feasible per se, but they do think about it. It is possible, but not likely to get over there in a plane like that. They do have all the fuel that they need, but again, this is another plot convenience, the fact that they have all this fuel just standing by. But here we are about to attack the prisoner transport with Janae in there, and Daryl is going to take things into his own hands. And here Losang is talking about that they're not ready for Laurent to take charge. He's supposed to be the head of the movement. He's not ready yet. And then this woman here, who I think is a new character, I don't remember her anyway, but she's talking about how, are you ready? So is he trying to hold on to power? Is he really trying to have Laurent's best interests at heart? We don't know this character enough yet at this point. That's something I think we're going to get into. But he says, we are not ready. That is definitely something that's going to be resolved later on the season. And here we got the two great finale scenes. We got the assault on the prisoner van, and we got farm being overrun and lightning strikes. I love the scenery. I love the lightning bolts coming down. And they're like, there has to be a reason why we have to leave now. So the fuel explodes, which is a great visual as well. But the lightning strike, very convenient for the plot, of course, because the generator shuts down and all the zombies come in. But it is a great visual. I mean, just seeing the zombies through the woods at night, really awesome. And then here, there's supposed to be a bomb that goes off that sets the trucks on their side, and they're supposed to rush in, take the prisoners, and then leave. But it's kind of a naive way of looking at it because all of these soldiers are armed and they would come out shooting, definitely. So even if their plan worked to begin with, it's not like they would be able to get out of this situation without bloodshed. But they seem to be under this delusion that they can. So Daryl just runs in when the bomb doesn't go off and just starts shooting and killing people. And it becomes very brutal. The other revolutionaries just kind of reluctantly back him up. And they're all in on trying to free the prisoners there. And here we got the plane. They're ramping up to take off. And I really love this scene. They free the prisoners. And then Janae is there. The big bad is there. And Daryl is not on board with the pacifism, as it turns out. Because he said he's not going to kill somebody unless he needs to. He clearly doesn't need to in this moment. So Daryl was either lying to Lasang or himself. He loaded the gun, he pointed it at her. Now, we don't know what he would have done. Would he have shot her, or would he have said, okay, we're taking you prisoner right now? Who knows? I mean, logically speaking, there is something to be gained from taking Janae prisoner, learning what the enemy is up to, and even using her as a negotiating tactic or something like that. Like, there is something to be gained by doing that, but Daryl doesn't seem to want to do it. And then the bomb that was supposed to go off ends up going off. That's another convenience, but they set that up, so I'll write that one off. But I like that, you know, and I want Daryl to become a little bit more peaceful in this, because I want him to be the hero, right? So that's the arc for Daryl, I think, in this show here, is he's going to learn to become a little bit more peaceful, maybe. And here we got Carol getting attacked by a zombie, and then she throws it into the propellers. You know, it's definitely an homage to Indiana Jones. Director Greg Nicotero even says that in the behind the scenes thing at the end, but I thought of it immediately. And then we have this really great stunt where we're driving through this field of zombies, and it turns out when you watch the behind the scenes, they literally did just drive a plane into stuntmen, and then they fell over. Like, that is unreal to me, and I can't believe that they actually did that, and it ended up being perfectly safe. So that's got to be an intimidating stunt to pull off, but they, I think, did a great job with it. Like, the visuals are really cool. So I love this final scene here, and then we get that final image of going into the setting sun, or rising sun rather, and it's a new hope, you know, getting above. So planes are a symbol of freedom as well, so it's definitely a lot in that plane symbolism. So I think that this episode was pretty good. I give it like a 7 or 8 out of 10. We had a great finale. We set up everything, and it's smart writing along the way. I think the character of Ash, I like what they did with him. I didn't necessarily get emotionally invested in him as a character, but I think it was smartly planned out. The only thing I think detracting from this episode is just the fact that we got some plot conveniences, and I would like to see a bit more from Daryl, but I assume we're going to get that next episode. So overall, pretty strong premiere, and I think it sets up for a decent season, and I'm looking forward to it. So definitely sub if you want to see more videos like this. And with that, it's been your boy Shuggy, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.